What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the January 3rd edition of the NBA Lineup Generator video. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. We have a 10-game NBA slate tonight on both DraftKings and FanDuel. There's 12 total games going on, but both sites cut off the two 10 p.m. games. So we have a pretty solid 10-game slate. We have some big contests on DraftKings in particular tonight. Should be a pretty fun one. And we're going to walk through the slate, as always, using the lineup generator for both sites. If you're not familiar with this tool, I will explain it as we go through the video. But first, make sure that you like this video, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you get an alert when our shows go live as well. Now, starting on the DraftKings side, the first option you're going to have is the type of lineups that you want to see. You can choose to see all lineup types, only chalkier lineups, more balanced lineups, or more contrarian lineups. The selection you make is or should be determined by the type of contest that you're playing. Obviously, you can just choose to see all lineups and give yourself as much variety as possible. But if you are going to limit it, chalkier lineups for your smaller fields, contrarian lineups for your largest fields, balanced lineups for things in between. For this video, I'm going to select all lineups, and then you have the option to lock in a player if you would like to do so. I'm not going to do that in this video. I don't really recommend doing it if you're playing a lot of lineups. Say if you're somebody that is going to play a 20 max, I would not recommend doing it. But if you're only playing one lineup or two lineups or something like that, you can easily save yourself some time on this screen by just locking in someone that you know you want to have. Now, on the next screen is when we start to see the lineups that are generated for us. And what this is showing you are lineups that we project to be profitable over the long run using our player projections, our ownership projections, our simulation models, all on the back end, simulating the slate out many, many times, and then presenting you with lineups that project to be profitable. So you are getting access to all of our data, and then you are getting the end result of that process. And then on this page, you can see the total salary used, the fantasy projection, and the ownership projection for each given lineup, along with that same information for each player. At the bottom, there are two sliding scales, one for projection, one for ownership. These are useful because the numbers at the top can be interesting to look at, but they don't really tell you anything on their own. These sliders down at the bottom compare the lineup to the alternatives. So you can see that this lineup projects relatively well and is relatively low owned compared to the alternatives that you can get to. If you like a lineup, you save it. If you dislike a lineup, you discard it, and you will be presented immediately with another lineup that projects to be profitable. You also have the ability to customize these lineups. So you could decide you like every aspect of this lineup and just save it. Or you could look and say, all right, well, I mostly like this lineup, but I don't want Kawhi Leonard for whatever reason. Click the arrows over here on the right-hand side next to Kawhi's name. You can then scroll down, see all of the small forward options. You see here that you have $100 left over. He's $8,400. So anybody $8,500 or below can replace him. You get that same data and information for each player as well. So you can see here that, for example, Desmond Bane projects to be even lower owned than Kawhi's 5%. He projects about 2 points behind Kawhi. If you just prefer Bane, you would click the arrows here and he would replace Kawhi in this lineup. Everything else would stay the same. And then obviously you could change other players if you want to. So you aren't strictly forced to use the lineups that are presented. You can use them as a baseline and make the adjustments that you want to make. Now I'm going to save the first 20 lineups that show up, and we can take a look at our exposures on the next screen for a 20 max contest. And here at the top, we have Santi Aldama showing up 70% of the time. He's $4,200. The Memphis injury report just came out. Vince Williams is out. Derrick Rose is out. Rose does not have an impact on Aldama, or shouldn't have an impact on Aldama, but Vince Williams certainly could. We saw 28 minutes from Aldama yesterday. I don't expect that again today, but he should play enough minutes to look pretty good at a $4,200 salary. Donovan Mitchell is clearly one of the best plays on the slate at $9,500. Seventh most expensive player on DraftKings, fifth highest projection. Great matchup against the Wizards, averaging 38 minutes per game without Darius Garland this year, about 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. That number should be higher in this matchup. So we're getting to a ton of him. Keontae George at $5,700 is risky, but does make some sense at that salary. We've seen a very difficult to predict rotation between Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, and Keontae George, but George has played 28 minutes in each of the last two games. He's only $5,700, so we're getting to him a lot. Bismack Biyombo at $3,800, showing up 50% of the time. Played 28 minutes yesterday. I think projecting around 24 minutes makes sense. There is a lot of volatility in his playing time. He's not a great point per minute guy, but he is still only $3,800. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, essentially the backup to Mike Conley, likely to give you somewhere from 17 to 20 minutes. This ownership is likely to come down as we get more news and more injuries throughout the day, but For right now, he's looking like a useful value piece at 3,500. Jared Allen has been playing big minutes lately for the Cavs, gets that great matchup against Washington, like getting to him. OG Anunoby played 35 minutes in his first game with the Knicks. He also fouled out and lost about 4 to 5 minutes of playing time. It is entirely possible that we get 38 plus minutes from Anunoby tonight at just 5,600. Makes him look like a strong value. Now, Dante DiVincenzo is kind of interesting because he played 26 minutes in the Knicks' most recent game. That was the first game we saw with Anunoby. But I do think we need to be cautious with him because his salary has come up a little bit, and he did pick up about 4 minutes because of Anunoby fouling out. I do think there's a good chance that we still only see 3 rotations from DiVincenzo, so I would be cautious with him. This is a spot where maybe I want to walk him back a little bit, and I'll show you how to do so in a minute. Sam Merrill, same thing, 3,400, good matchup. Certainly could just get hot against the Wizards, but he also could just play like 12 or 13 minutes. I have no confidence in him. He will disappear as we get more news today. But again, I would probably want to walk this back a little bit as well. Then we get back to players that we can be confident in. Luka Doncic, 11-5, showing up 25% of the time. Halliburton in what should be a high-scoring game against Milwaukee at 10-2, showing up 20%, along with Rudy Gobert, who is only $7,200 and has been playing massive minutes for Minnesota, at least 37 minutes in 3 straight games for Gobert. Now, if you were looking at this and you wanted to walk back any of these players, but specifically Alexander Walker or Merrill or DiVincenzo, you can do it very easily from this screen. I already showed you how to use the arrows on the individual lineups page to swap players out, but you can also just click on the player that you want less of. So in this case, I'll show you using Alexander Walker. And it's going to move all of the Alexander Walker lineups to the top. You can then go through quickly and see which ones you want to get rid of, whether you want to do that by lowest fantasy projection, highest ownership, some other metric that you want to use. And then you just go in, discard the individual lineups. Again, you could use the arrows to get rid of them as well, but discard the original lineups, go to get more lineups, which will take you back to the previous screen, and then simply discard the Nickeil Alexander-Walker lineups and replace them with lineups that do not have him. And we will now have gone from 35% Alexander Walker to 20%. You can do this, again, now you have 35% Merrill, so you would want to do the same thing, or I at least would want to do the same thing with him. But the thing to keep in mind is that every lineup that you are presented with in this tool is projected to be a profitable lineup. So from an exposure standpoint, it becomes about risk tolerance. You don't have to worry about, oh, I'm cutting this player out, so now I'm not playing profitable lineups. You are still playing lineups that project to be profitable. It just becomes, do I want 35% of my risk for the night going to Sam Merrill? I personally would not, so I would walk that back. But obviously, as you do that, it has the potential to make other players that you don't really want a lot of either start popping up. So you may have to do that a few more times, but it's very easy to manage your player allocations from this screen. Now we're going to look at the same thing for FanDuel. But first, if you are looking to use this tool for yourself, sign up using the link in the description below on YouTube, or if you're watching on Twitter, in the tweet below. It's $14.95 per week. And we created this tool with the lower stakes, lower volume, single entry, 3 max, 20 max type player in mind. One of the most difficult things about moving up and getting better at DFS is that if you're starting from low stakes, it's very difficult to find quality data and quality tools that are available at a price point that makes sense for you. You can use the best tools available, but if you're playing $20 a night and you're paying $200 for data, you're not going to profit. It doesn't really matter how good the tools are, how good you are. It's not going to happen. So this is available for you, $14.95 per week. It's a very accessible price point, and it's the most cost-effective way to get access to our data and our models. You don't get all of the inputs rather, that you do with, say, the Sims package, but you're still getting the end result. You're still leveraging that data and those models to improve your DFS process. Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. Again, perfect for single entry, 3 max, 20 max builds. And now we're going to look at the FanDuel side. Again, looking at all lineups and not locking anyone in. We should get some different exposures here since obviously FanDuel has different roster requirements and pricing. And at the top, we have $5,800 Keontae George. Again, he is risky, but his playing time has been pretty good over the last couple of games. And he is somebody that Utah should be wanting to get a better look at. Chimezie Metu, only $4,600. Got the start in Kevin Durant's absence last game. Assuming he starts tonight, he looks like one of the better values on FanDuel. $4,300 Jae'Sean Tate. Likely to play big minutes tonight. No Dylan Brooks again for Houston. Also no Tari Eason. So he's showing up a lot here. He's a couple $100 less expensive on FanDuel than on DraftKings. We're getting to Aldama again. Bradley Beal, no Kevin Durant, only $6,500. So a little bit less expensive on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. He's showing up 40% of the time. Jalen Johnson, likely to play big minutes tonight for the Hawks. He is showing up 40% as well. Donovan Mitchell, one of the better plays on FanDuel. He's great on DraftKings, as we saw, but also very good on FanDuel. Trae Young at 10-3 looks good, showing up 30% of the time. He's been playing huge minutes lately as well. Jabari Smith, likely to get a bump in playing time with no Tari Eason. He's showing up 30% here. We have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the back end of a back-to-back. So there is some risk that he loses a couple of minutes after playing nearly 37 minutes last night. But on average, he's playing 35 minutes per game. That's what I'm projecting him for here. It makes him look pretty good. Cam Johnson, only 5,800. We've seen some questionable rotations from the Nets lately. It makes it difficult to know exactly how to project these guys. Of course, we had the game against Milwaukee where they sat half their starters, then they benched all their guys after the first quarter. But they've also been in some blowouts lately. If this game's competitive, it's likely that Cameron Johnson is playing 32 or 33 minutes at only $5,800. That makes him look pretty appealing. And then we're wrapping things up with 25% of Bismack Biyombo. I like him more on DraftKings. I don't love him on either site, but he's a good enough point per dollar value. He does look better on DraftKings just because of having 2 center spots, but again, a quality value on FanDuel as well. It'll allow you to pay up elsewhere to get upside at other positions. So that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to sign up using the link in the description below. Thank you for checking out the video, and good luck on your lineups tonight.